Hi everyone, welcome to InfosecTrain. So today we'll be having a discussion on the preparation strategy for the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. So my name is Krish. I'm working as a SME for cloud security at InfosecTrain, and I'm a consultant who provides support for various companies and organizations to move to cloud platform and to basically support them for various cloud security strategies and designing cloud solutions and all these things. And for more information, you can visit my LinkedIn profile. So today, team, we are going to talk about the AWS Architect Associate Level Certification. So starting from the August 30, 2022, the AWS is revising their most popular certification called as the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. And the new version code is actually SAA-C03. So before I start the discussion on this particular certification strategy, you have to first of all understand why we have to go for a AWS certification. Or do we have to really go for a certification in AWS? We have other cloud providers also like Azure, we have GCP, etc. And they also offer us certifications. And for like in some companies they use AWS, some companies they use Azure, some companies they use all of these things together. So which one to go for? So team, first point to keep in mind is that if you're a person who want to start with cloud computing or just want to start your cloud journey or want to become a DevOps engineer or maybe a cloud engineer or a cloud security expert or a cloud architect or anything like that, you can start with either AWS or Azure or GCP because they are the most popular three providers in the market. So you can go for any of them. Like if you can go for AWS, you can go for the AWS Architect Associate, or if you want to go to Azure, you have Azure Architect certifications. Like the same way, every providers are offering some kind of certifications, and once you basically go for one particular certification from one vendor, then it's very easy for you to learn the other cloud provider certifications in the same level. So today, team, I'm going to start with the list of certifications that AWS is currently having. So you can see that these are the list of certifications that we basically, as of now, as of the day when I'm recording this particular video, we have these certifications in the list. So we have a practitioner level cert or foundation level certification, then we have a associate level certification, then we have a professional level certification, and then we have a specialty level certifications. So out of these things, team, in this video I'm going to cover in detail about the one certification called as the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. So first of all, this is a common question that people ask. So Krish, do we have to basically go for a AWS Foundation certification first of all, like the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner and all? So I have said this in many videos, but see team, when you want to go for a cloud platform, let's say AWS or anything like that, if you want to become an architect or if you want to become an operations expert or if you want to become a cloud engineer and all, this is not the one for you. This is just a foundation level certification. So like for example, if you want to just learn the high level foundations or just the high level overview of the cloud platform and the key common AWS services, then you can go for the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner certification. But if you are a person who want to basically start with the cloud computing, and if you want to have a very strong foundation knowledge in AWS, or plus if you're planning to work in some solutions architect or system engineer or mean cloud engineer or DevOps engineer role, etc., it's a very important thing to go for a associate level certification because that is something that the companies expect in minimum from you. Okay, and out of these three certifications in the associate level, team, this is the one which we are going to explain in detail now, the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. So before going for this certification, what is the benefit of learning this, team? So once you basically learn the certification detail, it's actually a way of proving yourself that you're having the right skills to work in the cloud platform, especially the AWS cloud platform. It helps you to clear the interviews if you want to get or specialize on the cloud platform to higher certifications, or maybe if you want to get into a job profile specific to cloud computing. For all these things, this certification can help you very much. So these are the prerequisites I always say for every certification, not specific to AWS, not specific to Azure. So if you are a person who want to become an architect or a cloud engineer or a cloud operations engineer or cloud expert or maybe cloud security architect or any roles like this or DevOps engineer, whatever roles it is, these skills are mandatory for everyone to have. First of all, team, you must have something called as a basic computer networking skills. That's a very important thing. Like you must know the concept of IP addressing, subnetting, and you must know the concept of the various basics of network devices, the packets. So those kind of network foundation concepts are very good to know. Then there is something called as a Linux and Windows administration fundamentals. Like it's not a mandatory thing I'm saying, but still for most of the job roles, if you search in the Naukri or other websites, you will see that if you basically search for the job roles for cloud computing, you will see that they will always ask you the skills on Linux operating system or Windows servers, etc. Like for example, in Linux also, I'm not saying that you have to basically be a master in Linux or you have to know everything in Linux, but at least you must know the foundations of Linux or basically the key commands, the permissions, and the security, basic security commands, and those like networking commands and all. These kind of things are very important for you to learn. And in Windows, if you can get to understand the concept of Windows Server Administration or just the foundation of Active Directory, etc., it's basically good to have. Then the third thing that people always ask is that, so do we have to learn programming if you want to go to cloud? So first of all, team, no cloud provider say that you have to master programming or basically learn programming to work in the cloud platform. But the thing is that while you work in the job roles, like for example, if you're working as a cloud engineer or a cloud operations engineer or DevOps engineer or a cloud architect or any job roles like this, definitely at some point of time you will need the skills of a basic scripting concepts. So that doesn't mean that you have to master everything, but at least if you can basically learn the basics of JSON, if you can basically learn the basics of YAML, if you can learn the fundamentals of Python, these things can help you a lot. Because like in cloud or on-premise also, we basically focus on something called as a automation nowadays. And in the cloud also, we need to have more automation. We want to basically have a proper incident response. We want to have a proper deployment. For all these things, we use automation. And for automation, the scripting knowledge is a very must have. So this is something which I always recommend. And as I always say, you don't have to learn from the scratch and basically, learn everything, but at least the fundamentals plus just some examples or just play with some kind of coding and all, it will help you a lot. That's more than enough. Then the next thing is the team cybersecurity fundamentals. So don't think I'm saying it only for a specific kind of people or specific kind of job role, but almost for every cloud job role, this is a mandatory thing to have a cybersecurity fundamentals. So why we need it actually? Or is it mandatory for us actually? So, Tim, the reason why I am saying it's basically a mandate thing for all of you, in fact, me, also, you, or everyone, is that if you want to go to a cloud platform like Amazon or anything like that, you're deploying something, right? Let's say you're deploying a server, you're deploying storage, you're deploying network, you're deploying the IP addressing, subnetting. Like this, you're basically deploying a lot subnets, you're deploying firewalls, you're deploying routers, you're deploying applications. For all these things, there is a security viewpoint also. So if you know the cybersecurity fundamentals and if you're aware of the key foundation security factors like vulnerabilities, threats, risk, and the various attacks or these kind of things, if you're basically aware of it, that will definitely help you a lot in your cloud journey. And finally, team, last but not least, minimum 2 years experience. So that is not mandatory. I will never recommend this as a mandate for your associate level certifications. If you are a person who want to go for a professional level certification or above, then it's mandatory to have. So basically, I'm not expecting any participant to have a detailed knowledge or basically a deeper knowledge on the real-time aspects or basically they must have a work experience. I don't expect that actually. So let's dig into the key aspect of the certification called as AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. So the team, there are two words. We have a solution and we have an architect. So what is a solution? So first of all, when talking about solution team, we have a word called as a requirement. Okay. So for the requirement, we have to design a solution. The solution is an architecture or a plan which is basically put in place to meet your client's requirements. Okay, so basically the goal of thing is that team, we are choosing the proper solution the right way to in the right aspect to find solutions for the requirement of various organizations. That's what we call as a solutions architect. Like for example, let's suppose if you go to a cloud platform, we have some, let's suppose that we have different kind of storages, we have different kind of DB services, we have different kind of app services. But how do you choose which is the best one for your requirement specifically? If you want to choose which is the best one for your requirement, then you must be an expert architect. So this is not something which you only get by work experience. This is something you get by continuous reviewing, continuous learning, continuous updates, be aware of the changes happening. So for all these things are mandatory if you want to become a solutions architect, because you will never find the same kind of requirement for every clients you're meeting. Every person have a different requirements, and what basically happens is that if you want to build a solution for that, you must have a very strong knowledge in the solutions provided by the AWS cloud platform. And that is why we basically go for this particular certification called as a solutions architect associate. So to basically start with, team, for the certification, as of now, from the changes happen, like as I said, there is a change happened in this August 2022. So now in the exam is basically having 4 domains. Previously just 5 domains, now it's actually 4 domains. That is, domain one is basically design resilient secure architecture, design resilient architecture, design high performing architectures, design cost optimized architecture, and totally we have a total of 4 domains in the new examination. So basically in the exam, I'll give you a high level overview on how the exam will look like. So I'm switching to my browser screen here. So you can see that this is the certification screen, and they are saying that the AWS certification is basically going to change. The AWS certification is basically going to change on August 30th, 2022. So I'm just clicking on this learn more link, and you can see that now they have changed the certification. I'll reload this page once. See, this exam does not require deep hands-on coding experience, although familiarity with basic programming concepts would be an advantage. Now they have updated the web page to AWS Certified Solutions Associate, the new one. So I'm just scrolling down to the exam, team. This is the exam overview. So first of all, the exam is basically having 130 minutes to write the exam, and basically the exam cost is $150 plus tax can come according to the country. So you have to watch out for the tax also, and you can write the exam either from your home or office via online proctored exam manner, or you can basically go to the exam centers. Okay, so it's offered by two vendors called as a Pearson VUE and PSI. You can either opt for one. Okay, that's it. And totally in the exam we have a total of 65 questions. Okay, in the exam we have a total of 65 questions, and out of the 65 questions, team, 50 questions is basically where you are getting the actual score for, and the rest 15 questions is basically unscored. Okay, so out of the total 65 questions, 50 questions are basically something which will affect your score, and that is actually where you're getting the score for, and rest 15 questions, rest 15 questions are basically something for research or experiment or basically future updations, and they are not affecting your score. So let's do one thing, team. Let's scroll down to the bottom and basically let's see the exam guide. This is a very important thing to understand. This is something which basically help you to understand what exactly is the scope of this examination. So this AWS exam is intended for individuals who perform in the solutions architect role. And this exam validates the candidate ability to use AWS technologies in designing solutions based on AWS well-architected framework. Now, so Krish, what is a well-architected framework? This is actually what we call as a well-architected framework. So it's a kind of framework which basically focus on various aspects of designing a solution like security, reliability, performance efficiency, operational excellence, cost optimization, sustainability, etc. So we will be making a different video on this, and you will be able to understand more in detail about this in the upcoming videos. So now, team, let's come back to the course things. So as per Amazon, they are basically expecting you to have at least 1 year of hands-on experience in designing cloud solutions on AWS cloud platform. But definitely, team, like most of the trainings nowadays, when you go for that, they train you from the very scratch of cloud computing. So this is completely optional, what I felt. So as I said in the exam, this is the way they are scoring for. So there is no penalty for guessing. That means there is no negative marks. You have a total of 50 questions, and basically rest 15 questions are basically unscored. So let's scroll down. So these are the 4 domains as I discussed before, where from the previous curriculum it's 5 domains. Now it's actually 4 domains. So before I go to the detailed aspect of every domain, one key factor which I want to tell you is that team, this is something which always people ask me. So in the new curriculum, there are two words which you always will see. The word is like this team, knowledge of and skills in. In every domains, you will see a word called as knowledge of and skills in. I just want to tell you a bit clarity on this. What is a knowledge? So when I say knowledge of something, that means that you just know that particular information. You just know how, like, what about the information, or you basically read about it. You're aware of that particular strategy or particular technology. That is what we call as a knowledge. And the ability to apply that knowledge and the ability to apply that in a practical manner, in a hands-on perspective, to apply it in various scenarios or basically use it for various requirements and to develop solution is what we call as a skills in. So this is a very important point you have to keep in mind. So in the examination, let's suppose that I'm going to domain one called as design secure architecture. And for the first one, there is a design secure access to AWS resources. See, knowledge of access control mechanisms, federated identity management, global infrastructure, AWS security best practices, AWS shared responsibility model. So you must be well aware of these things. What do you mean by this? That means that you must know what is access control and basically what is the reason why we have to have an access control mechanism. What is the reason why we have multi-cloud or multi-account management? Like instead of having a single account, why the companies opt for multi-account? And what is the purpose of federation? How federation can basically help us in the AWS cloud platform? What is the infrastructure of AWS? How they are basically dividing them into regions and zones and all? And what is the benefits you are getting with that? Then what all security best practices we have to follow in AWS while designing a solution. That is what we call as a knowledge. And when you say skills, it means that I am applying this knowledge. For example, let's say access control and management. So basically what happens when talking about identity and access management, you must know how to apply the best practice for security. Like like whenever a user is logging in, whenever the authentication happens, there must be a proper multi-factor authentication you must enable as a part of it. You must always make sure there is a proper authorization. That is where we have a principle of least privilege. We always has to give the minimum privilege to the entities who is working in the cloud platform. You must know the concept of AWS users, groups, roles and policies, and what is the reason why we have to go for a role. That is a very important point in the exam. For sure, you will get question on that. What is the reason why we have to work with the concept called as role? And what are the common security strategies we have, like when you have multiple accounts and all, how do you manage the proper organizational structure? How do I design a landing zone using the AWS control tower? So all these things are basically very important for you to learn to apply. That's why it's called as a skills in. Then team, we have something called as a task statement 2, design secure workloads on applications. So here we have a knowledge of application configuration and credential security. See, this is a very important thing. When talking about design secure workloads and applications, it means that when you say workload, what do you mean by workload? It can be anything. It can be your servers, it can be your databases, it can be your storage or whatever it is. You must know how to secure the access to it. You must know how can we basically have a defense in depth approach? How can we have a multi-layered security architecture? And how can we use various AWS services to provide a proper authentication and proper DLP solution, proper threat management solution or threat intelligence solution? How do I use the web application firewall? Those kind of things are basically very important to have a knowledge. And you must know how to apply it. Like for example, how to use security groups or network ACLs or VPC firewall for ensuring the security in multiple levels. And what is the difference between a public and private subnet? In what scenario we'll use a public subnet, in what scenario we'll use a private subnet? And then we must know how the AWS services can basically help us in securing the applications and all. How do I basically configure a proper secure VPN? Like the same way, you have a lot of things like task statements, design proper security controls. See, in the cloud platform, there is a lot of security controls we are having, but which one to use for what purpose is what we basically learn. Then resiliency is a very important capability of cloud platform. Team, what is a resiliency? When you say resiliency, it means that the ability for you to continue operation even if something goes wrong. Like for example, let's say you have a website running. So whatever disaster happens or whatever wrong happens, still you must be able to continue your operations. And resilience is done with the help of something called as a redundancy. So what all tools are basically there for that? Like how can I basically do a scaling there for ensuring the load management? How do I basically ensure that I can deliver my website or web content to the public, to all the customers across the globe by using a proper CDN solutions? What is the purpose of using containers? Do I have to go for a serverless computing scenario like this, or what is the purpose of going for a orchestration of workflow or automation of workflow? So like this, you must have a deeper knowledge of all these things and skills in designing all the solutions for it. Again, design highly available fault tolerant architectures. So team, like this, you have a lot of things you have to learn in this particular course. So first of all, this is a bit lengthy nowadays, because what happens is the team, when people talk about AWS Architect certification previously, they were covering only in a very high level with specific topics, but they have now introduced, or they have now increased the scope at least to 30% more, what I felt. So you can see that there's a lot of things here you have to understand. So, and in fact, there is a lot of people when they start learning AWS and start learning cloud, they will ask, so Krish, why this particular domain called as cost management is a very important factor? See, when you go to a cloud platform, normally the reason why you go for is that you want to save money. You want to have a better cost. But if you don't know how to choose a proper solution, if you don't know how to choose the proper payment strategies, if you don't know how to choose the proper storage or other service options, then you will not get the cost benefit as you're expecting. In fact, nowadays I have seen many companies are appointing people specifically to monitor and manage the cost of the cloud platform. That's a very important domain team. Then we have something called as a how to basically prepare for the examination. So first of all, it is mandatory for you to have a very detailed understanding. I'm not saying you have to learn everything, but you must know the solutions of everything. So you must know that all these four domains, you must be having a complete master level of skill set. For example, let's say if I'm asking you tomorrow that I have a requirement for choosing a database, how can you basically support that particular organization to support to move to cloud platform and choose the proper database solution there? Let's suppose that if I am using Amazon S3, how do I use Amazon S3 for my business requirement, or how do I basically optimize it for my requirement, and what all things I can basically do in that to make a best out of it? Like that, you must be having a very detailed knowledge of all these things. So I'm not talking about in the exam perspective only, team. These are the key things which you have to know even when you go for interviews also. Now, how do I prepare for this? First of all, team, everybody will think about the textbook. Just in case if you're thinking about textbook, so as per the information available, there is a textbook called as the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Study Guide, which is going to be released by Cybex in the month of October 2022. So, like once they release, you can buy this book. But even if I say that you have all these books, trust me, team, the AWS documentation is the best reference you can basically think about when talking about the examination process. Because even for me or for you or for everyone who is learning AWS, the AWS documentation provides the detail and the best reference. And especially if you're a person who not only focus on the exam, and if you're focusing on developing your skills in detail also, then AWS documentation is a must refer. And it's a beautiful way they have explained everything. And now they have a proper step-by-step process for doing every activity also in that. Now, the next resource which I always recommend for learning is the team, the AWS white papers. So there is a lot of white papers like this, like overview of AWS, AWS well-architected framework, AWS security best practices, storage services, architecting for AWS cloud. For all these things, if you search in Google, you will find out the PDF files for all these things, and it's available free of cost. And you have more white papers like this. You can check the AWS white papers page, and you will be able to find a lot of white papers which can help you with the exam. In fact, they make a proper, precise definition for what you have to understand. And now comes the most important part. Do the labs. If you want to pass this examination, or if you want to become a cloud architect, even if you are starting your journey in cloud, if you want to become a cloud architect, or if you want to get a job in cloud computing, or if you want to basically pass the examination, it is 100% mandatory for you to practice. How much more you can do the hands-on, how much more you can do the practice, nothing can replace that particular practice thing. So please do every possible demos team. Like if you basically look into the documentation, you will get it. I can show you an example there also. Let's suppose that you want to learn something, like for example, if I'm going for something called as a AWS EC2. So let me show you an example here. Team, now I'm going to the AWS EC2 documentation here. So AWS documentation here, not EC2, specifically AWS documentation here. And let's suppose if I'm taking something called as a AWS S3, and you will find a user guide here. So if you click on the user guide, what will happen is that, let me show you. See, you will see that they will clearly tell you what exactly is Amazon S3, what are the key factors or what are the key features we have on this. Let's suppose you want to know how to deploy something. Let me show you an example. I want to enable something called as a S3 object lock. I click on this, and what will happen is that team, they will tell you what exactly is object lock. They will give you the complete details about it. And if you want to enable object lock, see, they have a complete steps mentioned here. Sign into the console, go to the buckets. So choose the name of the bucket you want. On the object list, choose the name object. So like this team, you have a complete step-by-step option here for enabling or modifying all these things. See, just an example thing. Like the same way, you have this for almost every docu services. So documentation is something which will be a key for learning team. Trust me, it's a very important thing which can help you with that. So that is something which I also personally refer when I am writing an exam or when I am learning something or when I am updating my skills. So don't forget team, how much more you can do the labs. That is something which is the most important thing for you. Now, next point is that, so Krish, where can I find the materials for learning this? So the first thing is that if you want to learn, definitely either you can opt for a training. But when you're opting for a training, one very important factor is that any person who is training you must have a real hands-on experience in AWS. Because what happens that it's not like something you have to simply learn what is the service or how the service can be configured. You must know the real-time use case also. Even if it's not possible for every services to discuss about the real-time use cases, or even if it's not possible for every topics in detail, but for the key topics in AWS, you must know the real-time use case for it. For example, let's say there is something called as a S3 replication, S3 bucket replication. There is something called as a EC2 placement groups. There is something called as a RDS snapshots. So why we have to do that? What is the real-time purpose for basically using that in an organization? Why can't we go for the other solution? Like this, that's a very important thing which we have to understand. So for that team, you need to have a proper training for that. So the second thing is that this is something which I found very useful. There is something called as a AWS skill builder. There is a website called as a AWS skill builder. You can basically search for this. I like this time. You can just go to this website called as AWS Skill Builder, and it's a complete, almost there is a lot of courses that we have for free in that, which provides you a good visibility for you to select the proper courses and you will be able to learn those. For example, let's say if I want to learn something called as AWS Shared Responsibility Model, or if I want to learn about the AWS certifications, or if I want to learn about certain topics, I'll be able to get a proper outline and good understanding by going through this. I can show you an example team. This is one example for that. So if you want to get a training on the AWS Certified Solutions Associate, it's a 3-hour duration. So if you want to know the high level overview of this particular AWS certification and the key topics in it, you can enroll for this training called as a AWS Exam Prep, AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. You can find this particular training in the AWS Skill Builder website. Like the same way, the next question that people always ask is, Krish, do we have DUMS available for this? So what is a DUMS? DUMS means, like there's a lot of practice questions or some questions that is basically, which can be similar to the exam. That is what we call as a DUMS. So primary team, I never recommend you to go for DUMS before learning anything. So first thing is that always learn things properly and do maximum practice. And only when you're preparing for the exam, and if you hardly think you need it, or if you completely think if you need it, only in that case you go for DUMS. Otherwise, don't buy your DUMS or basically do anything because that is not necessary. And so how do I test my skills on the exam? So how do I know that if I'm ready for the examination, or how do I know that my skills are mapping the exam skills? Very simple team. If you go to the AWS website, in the official website itself, you can find something called as a sample questions here. See, if you click on that, you can see some nearly, 10 sample questions provided by AWS for your exam. So you can just check these questions to see if you are ready for that. Also, if you want to have a practice exam, like the same way you have in the real exams, you can go for something called as a AWS official practice exam. There is something called as an official practice exam. So they will give you total 65 questions, and basically they will give you a time of 130 minutes. So it's like a simulation for your real exam. This is something which I always strongly recommend to go for before the exam, because this gives you almost real exam experience. And this is the cost for it now, but you can always check the cost, because sometimes it can be free, sometimes it can be chargeable. The cost can vary. So this is something you can check. Okay. So that's something which I want to discuss with your team. And now, just a few more things. So how tough the exam is. First point is that team, as I told you, exam is never tough if you do these things. If you do practice, if you know the concept of AWS key solutions, if you're well aware of how these things can be implemented in real time, if you know the use cases, the exam is super simple for you, trust me, team. And one key factor is that almost every question you are getting, almost every MCQ question you are getting in the exam will be scenario based. That means that they will not ask you what is a security group or what is a EC2 instance. They will give you a scenario, and they will ask you how that scenario or what is the best solution for that scenario. Let me show you one example question, team. I'm not going to discuss about this in detail. I'm just going to give you an example question here. See, a company runs a public facing three-tier web application in VPC across multiple availability zones. See, you see the way they are starting it. So what they're asking is that they're giving you a scenario. Okay, almost every question like this scenario. So we have an organization where we have a three-tier architecture. Three-tier means there can be three, like a web tier or app tier or DB tier, like that. There can be three tiers, and it's a public facing application. Amazon EC2 instances for the application tier is running on private subnets, and it need to connect to internet to download something, to patching and all. So what all things we can do to basically allow the instance to download the patches. So team, in this question what they are asking is that how do I connect, how do I provide outbound connectivity for my instances in the private subnet? The question directly means that how do I provide outbound connectivity for my applications inside the private subnet? So you must clearly know what is a private subnet. You must know what is use of NAT gateway. You must know where to place the NAT gateway. So if you have done these things at least once, then this question is the easiest one for you. The answer is A and B. How do we basically know that? It's pretty much simple, team. See, this is a very simple demo you have to do. Like for example, let's suppose that you have to basically create a VPC, and you have to basically deploy two subnets there, subnet number 1 and subnet number 2. So in the subnet number 1, it will be public because there is a path to the internet gateway, and the subnet 2 is basically private, where there is no connection to there is no route to the internet gateway. So what we will do is that we have to basically first of all create a NAT gateway, NAT gateway in the public subnet, and in the routing table of the private subnet we have to enter the information about this NAT gateway. So like this, you must know the scenarios very clear. You must know the use cases and scenarios very well if you want to pass the exam. And trust me, if you have done all these things in real, this exam is going to be super easy for you for sure. I'll give you one more example, team. Just one more question to give you an idea. A solutions architect is designing a solution to save cost for Amazon EC2 instances that do not need to run during a 2-week company shutdown. The application running on EC2 instances store data in instance memory that must be present within the instance resume operation. Which approach should the solutions architect recommend to shut down and resume the instances? So even this question, they are saying that they want to have a option to make sure that whatever they are running in the memory, that must be resumed. That must be available even when they resume back their job after some time, or maybe after a week or after days or whatever. And for the team, we have an option called as a hibernation. That is a new option which AWS introduced within the last 1 or 2 years. So what is a hibernation? So when you do a hibernation, what basically happens is that team, the hibernating of the EC2 instances will save the contents of your instance memory to the EBS volume. So what will happen when you restart the instance, or basically when you turn on the instance again, what will happen is that it will be loaded back to the memory, and still you will be able to get the actual state you are expecting. Like this, team, every question you're going to get in the exam will be scenario based. So you must prepare well for the exam. I strongly recommend you read the white papers. If you want, you can refer to the textbook which is going to be released. Then you can refer to the AWS exam readiness video and the exam sample exams and all. That's really good for you to do that. And That's enough team. You'll be able to prepare, do well for the examination. If you have some queries or concerns regarding the exam, or if you want to know more about any other certification in cloud platform, do drop a message below team. I will help you with that. And basically, we at InfosecTrain are basically providing the course for the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. If you're interested, you can basically join for this course team. And thank you so much. See you in the next video. Bye bye.